Well, hello there, and welcome back to Solera Elevate Blueprint Podcast. We highlight voices here, experiences, and the real world insights of leaders in the HR, recruiting, and talent space. Our goal is pretty simple. We want to keep the human at the center of this industry while exploring how we navigate over an ever ending challenges of new technology in this world of work. So, we're so glad to have you here with us. And today we're excited to welcome Tanner Hampshire. He's an HR leader with more than a decade of experience. So, Tanner, welcome. And we're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Very excited to talk with both of you today.
Wonderful. Well, we're excited to have you here. So you have a lot of strengths. You have a strength in talent pipelines, helping organize and adapt through uncertainty in your space. And you've really seen this market from every angle, supporting companies, developing teams, coaching individuals, all through like pretty big major transitions. So I love the topic that you chose for today because it's pretty timely. It's recruiting and job seeking during uncertain times. So we're going to explore this. We're going to explore the mindsets that go here, and just hear what Tanner has to say because he's the one on the front lines. So Tanner, we're excited to have you here. So let's dive in.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah. Tanner, let's just talk about when we look at what's happening right now in today's market, what's one thing you wish both recruiters and job seekers understood about navigating uncertainty that's going on right now? And where do you think the biggest maybe mindset gap is going on? Because I know you have a lot of good stuff on that.
As far as that goes, I think there is an immediate emotional reaction that you have to uncertainty, and especially people with the mindset of a little bit more organized. And you might use the word anal retentive, where you want everything to go perfectly and you're a very organized and meticulous person. That uncertainty can drive you absolutely insane. And I will say that I myself am a half organized person. So it does come a little easier to me when it comes to navigating uncertainty, when there's a gray area, when there are things that you just can't control that are part of your future. But the advice that I always give myself is to take a moment and embrace your current situation for what it is. You really have to ground yourself, and it takes time to actually look around you and find the things that you can control and the things that you're appreciative of in the moment. And I know that's easier said than done, but taking that moment as a breather is good for you regardless. If you can just take some time to think instead of panicking, that's going to help you. But then, if you can take it a step further and you can remind yourself of all the good things that you have going on right now, of all the people that you care about and that care about you, that's going to give you a good basis for planning your next move. And even in the midst of uncertainty, there is always a path forward. Time is going to go on regardless of what you do or what ends up being the consequence of the actions taken. Life is going to move on as well. And so, with that being the case, knowing that you can't control it, find peace in what you can control and find peace knowing that you're going to give it and have given it your best effort. And I think that's something that is crucial, especially when during a time like right now, where we have a lot of people that are worried about their jobs, worried about their futures, and not, and even on the other side, on the recruiter side, it's like there's so many different openings that have multiple candidates, and it can get exhausting to look through. But in both scenarios, I think that advice is something that everyone could use a little more of. Just some time
Oh,
to just relax.
absolutely. I mean, they there's that saying where energy flows, energy goes.
Mm.
And so if you're putting in that negative energy and you're frazzled and you're overwhelmed, then your little tasks or your job search are going to be overwhelmed too. And they just start to compound and escalate, and they can escalate pretty quickly. So, like you said, you know, having that gratitude and understanding like today, hey, we got to wake up. We're pretty lucky.
Absolutely.
Right now, the sun is shining on us. We're really, really lucky. And so, just putting that frame of mind as you start your day, as you start your job search, as you start your job duties, can really just make a difference in how it goes. And then it's attracting the right people and the right companies. And that could be huge.
And I like this point of view too, Tanner, because everything that we do in our workday, in our workflow, even if our job is actually finding a job, that carries over to our home life. So if someone takes your advice, they're not just improving what's going on in their workday, they're improving their home life too. And like Lisa said, we don't want to take negativity into that. So that's a really
It's
great point. Hmm.
That is so true. The people that care about you are the ones who are going to be there to support you during those tumultuous times. So you want to take the time to be with them and enjoy their company and, not bring all the baggage home of what you're dealing with elsewhere. One
Yeah.
last analogy that may or may not be allowed, but I think of it like Finding Nemo and Crush the Turtle, just flowing through. He doesn't know where the current's going to take him, but he's just flowing through
Yep.
down the
Hey,
river.
dude.
Isn't that what he says? Hey, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Just got back from Hawaii, so I'll give you one of these.
Oh
He's
yeah.
like, I'm sorry. Down under.
Right. You're very familiar, yeah, with the recent Hawaii
Yeah, I
storm.
mentioned too many times. It's awesome. So that's awesome. That's such good. I might have to get like a little sea turtle and Nemo on my desk just as a reminder. Like having those little cues could be huge. So as you work with companies and you're working with recruiters or you're working with employees that you're trying to connect together and get them together, how do you help both sides be able to embrace that calmness as well as getting rid of that noise that's going on outside of there, so that we can truly get a feel for the corporate culture, how it works, and each individual personality so that that true fit can happen. Because sometimes, if people cannot let that open up that day, you could be missing out on some good opportunities. Do you have some things on how you guide your staff or guide the people that you're recruiting?
Yes, absolutely. And it's relatively similar for both parties, but I'll kind of break it up because it does differ slightly. I from the recruiting side, I would encourage anyone who is, in the space of recruiting, in the space of talent management or sourcing, to embrace the different uh, skills and experience that may not be what something like AI might identify as perfect, because it's something that you can potentially explore. And I give you an example. You're recruiting for a job, you get 30 different candidates, and it can be very intimidating because you've got to look through them all. So you want to rely on technology, and that makes total sense. But my only request would be that you look into a candidate past just that surface level look. And it's because, in my experience, what I've done before, it's you can find some of the best people by digging just a little bit deeper and taking an actual true look at their comprehensive experience. Not only that, you get a much better picture of a candidate by having the conversation with them, by talking to them about that experience and allowing them to answer questions. Because a lot of the times, at the end of the day, a piece of paper does not accurately define someone. And it is what's necessary to be able to apply to have interviews. But who you are as a person is not defined by that piece of paper or that electronic attachment that
Yep.
tells about yourself. So that would be my advice from a recruiter standpoint. But from a candidate standpoint, you do need to differentiate yourself, because the advice that I just gave to the recruiters, unfortunately, does not as much apply to you. You have to be able to accurately tell your story through that piece of paper and that attachment. Now, I think it makes total sense for a recruiter to give everyone a fair shot to look as much as you're able to. But as a candidate, unfortunately, that's just not always going to be the case. Sometimes you're going to be in competition with 50 to 70 other people. And that sounds scary, but what you can do is differentiate yourself. Tell your story in a unique and different perspective because you know your story the best. So don't necessarily just rely on the cookie cutter resume template that everybody has because you're not
Mhm.
going to be able to distinguish yourself like that. You're going to look like everyone else. Instead, take some time, make it look nice. Doesn't have to be a work of art, but make it look nice and formatted. But take some time and really work out your story. What sets you apart? What have you accomplished? And I think that's something from the narrative perspective when you're talking through your work experience. Speak to it from a narrative. It's not just, I do this. It's not a job description refresh. You're not telling them what's in your job description. You're telling them what you accomplished. I, hired 35 people in a 2-month period for a special project. Quantify your numbers and talk about your successes because that's what a recruiter is going to want to see when they're filling a position. And I would say that to just about anybody. It's applicable across any industry. Make sure you're telling your story accurately and you're telling it in a way that can differentiate you from the competition.
Yeah, for sure. So what about this new generation coming in and
Please.
how they don't have a lot of experience and
Hold on
you
one
know they're
second,
not
honey. Lisa, hold on one second. I'm going to have you start that over. I'm going to change this layout real quick because we look like bobbing heads and it just looked really stupid. That looks way better. So just start over with what your question was a second ago, and we'll just cut this piece out. Sound okay?
okay.
All right.
Yep. All right, Tanner, that is just that's great advice. What about the advice for this new generation that's coming in with little experience or no experience? And they have a harder time maybe filling their page where the more experienced person is trying to has to cut things out because they can't get it all on one page.
Of
But really highlighting your story. So what are some maybe key points that you feel could really help these people understand how to make their resume unique and make it stand out so that they get that opportunity for that first interview to elaborate more so.
I would, and I want to speak to the new generation from the perspective of a generation that is millennial. So, as a millennial, believe me, we've gotten the bad rep. All right, we haven't exactly been appreciated. We've been kind of dumped on by the older generations over time, and you know, avoid that negativity from your new perspective, from you as a Gen Zer. It's okay to embrace what makes you different. And as far as that goes, I think the public perception of Gen Z is that they are kind of turning the the recruiting world on its head because it's not necessarily anymore, I want to work for a company because X. It now seems that the perception is more of, what can a company do for me? And I embrace and applaud that perspective because at the end of the day, we all have jobs that we want to or have to do. And we might as well ask for what a company can help us with just as much as what we can help them with. So I
Yeah.
want to preface with that because it is very important to hold your employer accountable to provide a good culture, a good job for you to be able to work at. And to the point of Gen Zers now, there are a lot of different ways to make money. And there are a lot of different ways to, or a lot of different jobs out there. So I want to preface with that. But then I also want to say, you have to be realistic. not all of the Gen Zers are going to end up being on YouTube or being on TikTok and getting famous and making a bunch of money.
TikTok fame.
So we're
I'm
gonna
like, bummer.
have we're going to have to continue to work to some extent. So there is a difference between expecting a lot of your employer, expecting your employer to provide a good culture, and then there's being a little too cocky about it. And you do not want to fall into that trap. So that's with the biggest advice that I could give. Treat each interview like this is your dream job. Treat each that company that you apply for like it's the one you've wanted to work for all along, because
Mhm.
as soon as you become jaded with the idea of working for a company for one reason or another, you are not going to be successful during that interview process. You are already sending yourself out on a bad foot. You need to condition your mind to think of each uh, I guess you could say, like recruiting adventure, applying adventure as the most important one that you're on. And it's so easy nowadays to spray and pray on Indeed and apply to 8 different jobs in a 10-minute span and just see what works. And that's
Yeah,
fun. I'm not even saying not to do that, but take a little bit of time to read the job description to make sure that it's something you want to do, and
yeah,
then craft your resume and your cover letter around that, because that is going to differentiate you, and you don't want to come across as someone who's uninterested. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard this exact thing. Oh, well, I've actually applied to a lot of places, so which one are you again? Not exactly the best question to ask someone.
no,
That's common.
no. Yeah, there
Um,
has to be a humbling to of I'm new. I have to start sometimes at the bottom. I've got to prove I need to get in the door to prove myself and then work my way up, because that's usually, even at any age, sometimes that's how it has to be at certain points. I've got to get in at this level and then I can work my way up again.
and it can be very frustrating from that perspective, like, hey, I want success, I want whatever it is you want, whether it's money, success, the ability to enjoy the work you do, anything like that. That's awesome, and I think every human being wants that at their core. But you also have to realize that the world isn't as willing to give you everything you want as you may hope, and that kind of comes with age. And as an old man, I can officially say the world is not here to give you what you want, unfortunately. You have to kind of take it for yourself. And by doing so, you feel that much better about it because you've earned your opportunity. You've worked your way to the top. And that's something that no one can take from you.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
have this innate ability to, better yourself. And that's a wonderful thing. So don't take that
yeah.
for granted.
Yeah. So what about the Gen X's that I see a lot are losing their jobs, and they've been, there for 20 years, middle management. And now they're being thrown into this, workforce, like you said, where you can just click a button and apply to multiples. What are some advice that you could give to that generation, as far as, first of all, definitely keeping calm, because usually there's a lot more on their plate with families and colleges and stuff like that. So, what's your advice for that generation moving into this market, and um, working with a recruiter too, like versus just doing LinkedIn and click, click, click?
Mm. That is a great question because it really does differ greatly between generations, especially nowadays, and not in a bad way. I mean, as I said, I'm speaking as a millennial here, so we're kind of caught in the middle of multiple different perspectives and different. We kind of grew up with tech, like at the forefront before technology, and then it was like just kind of thrown at us, and we had to learn to adapt with it. Now, I say that to say Gen X has a much more difficult problem because they grew up a lot. They went a lot of their life without true technology being introduced, and it can become very overwhelming and very frustrating. especially from the perspective that, you might have been in your line of work for a lot of years and you're pretty experienced, but now they're potentially bringing in someone, from a different generation, potentially younger than you. And that can be very frustrating, especially if that person ends up being your manager. Because, from your perspective, you're like, I've worked so hard, I know a lot. Why am I being managed by someone that, is younger than me, that has less experience? Or, as you had mentioned, you could find yourself in a situation where you are, laid off. You've been performing work for a long time. You've done a lot of good for a company. And then because of one reason or another, unfortunately, they have to restructure. That that is an awful kick. And I can speak personally that that just happened to me not more than 6 months ago. So it is an awful feeling. And I was only at that company for 5 years. So I can only imagine if you're put into that situation after 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to it's going to shock you. You're going to need to take the time to get it all out there. And I know that kind of some of the older generations may have a predisposition against letting emotions out, feeling the feelings that you need to feel in order to move past it. And I think that's one of the most important things you can do first and foremost. Feel sorry for yourself. Throw yourself a big old pity party and let it
Don't let it go on too long.
Right. That's exactly it. You give yourself time to feel it. You give yourself
Yeah.
time to let the emotions out. And then you pick yourself back up off the ground and you say, all right, now it's time to get back into it. And if you, for any reason, are technologically not inclined, if you have difficulty, using or working with technology, there are so many tutorials nowadays available on YouTube, on Google. Even try using ChatGPT to teach yourself ChatGPT. I swear it works. It's crazy. It's,
It does.
check
Use
it
Pretty
out.
cool.
you to teach yourself ChatGPT. That's one I haven't heard before. I love it.
The technology is there and it can be intimidating, but the learning curve is a lot more of a kind of a gradual slope nowadays because there's so many resources available to help you out. So if you've never used LinkedIn before, if you haven't, had to go out there and apply through these new career boards or job sites and they're frustrating you and they're really annoying, just take some time to give yourself grace to learn it and you'll be an old hat at it in no time. And to that point, I could definitely encourage working with a recruiter to the extent that you can. If you have access to, or if you see an opportunity to work with one, they are going to be very helpful, not only for maybe helping you find a job, but also to help shape your resume, your cover letter, give you advice on the industry. What you can do to differentiate yourself. So don't shy away from relationships just because maybe that's, one you're not exactly interested in. Any building relationships is going to be key because any one of the ones you build may be able to help.
Yeah.
Relationship key in human resources, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what we're doing here.
You never know where they come from either. Yeah. So, as a recruiter, and you're dealing with all these resumes and you're working with companies and you're seeing all different generations coming through, are there some, on a recruiter side end of it, are there some key points as you dive into these resumes that really help you move them from a good pile to a bad pile, or being able to see through some of that traditional writing that goes on in a resume to get some of those feelings behind it? Is there some cues that you see or that you look for as you navigate through those daily?
That is an excellent question, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because I want to put it out there for both sides, but like especially from a recruiting standpoint, do not judge someone for a 1 to 2 year per job work history, and it happens so much. I mean, so many times I've talked to hiring managers and this person has interviewed excellently, or even this person just looks really good because it's their first time looking at it. And I hear, well, they've only worked, at this job for 1.5 years, so they're a job hopper. And honestly, the term job hopper, it is so like antiquated at this point because the world does not work the way it used to. You don't work at a company for 15, 20 years and then retire from it. And, to that point, honestly, I swear that's a good thing. I would rather have someone who's worked at 3 or 4 companies, who's experienced multiple different either industries, jobs, people, who has like a breadth of experience coming in, and they're able to navigate things a lot more efficiently because they've had the opportunity to work 3 or 4 different places. They haven't been pigeonholed into one place where they're going to come in with only one set of ideas for how to do things. So I really want to attack that perception that exists for job hoppers. Now, I say that if in a 5 year span they've had 9 different jobs, that's one thing. I won't
Different,
I
right?
won't really give those people that much
Or
credit.
3 months long, yeah. They
But if
didn't
we're
get along with the team.
But if we're looking at, roughly at 1.5 to 2 years per job, that's honestly that could be a good thing. So, what you want to do with somebody like that is you want to talk to them. You want to understand what's happened. Have they kind of been searching for something they haven't found yet? Are they looking to grow their skill set? Are they looking for a home? Is it they just haven't found it and they're looking for one, or is your company an opportunity for them to potentially step up? Which, if that's the case, there are times when that could be mutually beneficial. There are times when that is not what you're looking for at all, and that's fine. But take the time to at least talk to them. Don't just write them off immediately because of something like
Yeah.
so. So now onto the potential candidate side. What you want to be able to do, and one thing that I always look for is I look for, first of all, applic the the uh, oh, one second, let me restart.
You're
The
fine.
what I always look for is the ability to match it to the job description. So that's number one. I do want to see that the work that you perform has some semblance of similarity to what's in the job description, which is a essentially advice to say sometimes you do want to switch your resume up a little bit, and this is where I kind of going back to taking the time to actually like format your resume and take the time when you apply to a job to maybe switch up a little bit, change your cover letter a little bit, change your resume. And, call it gaming the system, call it cheating, whatever you want. It's going to be effective because somebody like me is going to look at that and go, oh, okay, there's some applicability to the job description here. This person seems like someone I'd like to talk to. And the other one is highlighting your skills in an efficient way. So whether that is, just bullet points with skills, that's fine. Or you can put it into the descriptions that you have for each of your jobs. That works too. But I do want to kind of get an idea of what your skill set is and how you've been able to leverage it in the past to be successful. And that goes back to what I talked about with putting your accomplishments into your resume in a quantifiable form. I want to be able to see what you've accomplished and I want to see it quantified. I would like potential metrics to show, hey, I've been successful. Here's how I have been successful, and I use these skill sets to do it. And to that point, it just echoes the fact that if you're spraying and praying your resume everywhere, you are probably just not going to be as successful. You want to be able to personalize it and you want to be able to match it to the job description at hand. And so,
Yeah.
it's easier said than done. There's a lot of postings out there and not a lot of time to do it, but there is value in taking the time.
Yeah. So do you find that do you find you're starting to work with more and more people that are in a job? but just haven't found their home, just are not happy where they are? Or is it mostly the economy right now has let a lot out of their positions, and so there's more people looking now?
I think I've seen a paradigm shift more recently. For the past, I would say from like 2020 to 2023 or 4, it's been all about trying to find people who already have a job and convincing them that your company is more worthwhile than the job they have there, and convincing them to move over to you. And that presents an entirely different set of challenges and conversations. Now, unfortunately, and this is indicative of the economic environment and things going on, it is a lot more of people that are looking for work and that, essentially are interviewing with you without a job. And that is, it's a sad paradigm shift. You almost hate to see it. I mean, it is actually more beneficial for me as a recruiter, but it also is sad because, I mean, you want
You
people to
have
be able to, yeah.
probably have 10 applicants in one job. So that, that's sad because you can only award one person that job. Tanner, this has been fantastic information. I think that our audience is going to, really eat this up, because somebody that's out there that's new in this industry, either A, because they've been in a job for 40 years and now they have to look for one, or someone that's, coming out of school. One of the things that Lisa said earlier is, like, people have to understand that they have to start at the bottom sometimes and work your way up. And sometimes I think that's missed a little bit in certain cases. So I think you've given some just fantastic advice today. But we also want our listeners to be able to hear one last piece of advice for you before we wrap this up. So, like, if you had to tell yourself 10 years ago, one piece of advice, one little short tagline that our listeners can take with them and say, I like that nugget, what would that be?
That's okay. You know what? I'm gonna say this. At the end of the day, it's not that serious. And I wish I could have told myself that back then. I wish I could have, eased my anxiety and said, listen, it's not that serious. And I know that sounds like it's downplaying a lot of things, and like it's not taking the full gravity of the situation into account. But when you really look at it and you think about the failures that you've had, and when you felt low and when you felt down, and you think about it, all brings it back to the beginning, what I had mentioned. Take the time to remember the other good things in your life. Well, you got a chance to wake up today. The sun is shining. You have a roof over your head, and you have an opportunity to make the day your best. Remember all the people that care about you. Remember who you are as a person, and be grateful for the opportunity to do it. And this failure is not that serious, because you can wake up tomorrow and go back at it and continue to succeed. And I personally had to do that these in the months that came following the layoff announcement. I had to do that every day. When I failed, when I stumbled, when I fell. And you know what? It ended up with me finding exactly where I was meant to go, because I continued to get up the next day and I said to myself, you know what? This failure, not that serious. We're going to try again tomorrow. So that's
Oh,
what I got.
Tanner, that's
You feel better. Today's going to be a great day.
a great day. That's some fantastic advice right there.
I know. This is awesome.
I just also want to say thank you. You've just brought a lot of clarity and grounding to this kind of a conversation, because you spoke to both sides, the recruiter, the job seeker, and really helped us and the audience that will hear this, that in uncertain times, mindset, strategy, they actually matter more than anything. Like, making sure that you're setting yourself up for the best resume for the job, taking your time, having a good mindset about it. Like Lisa said earlier, where energy goes, energy flows, right? So we just really appreciate you, your honesty, the leadership you've shown here today. And I feel like you've shown a lot of commitment, that you really want to help people navigate this. And it can be a very foreign landscape for some. So thank you again for just
Thank
being
you.
a founding guest here on our Solera Elevate Blueprint. And we thank you for your insight, and we know our audience is going to love it. So I'm going to just say thank you so much for being here, and we will, I'm sure, talk to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you both.
All
It's
right.
been wonderful.
Thanks, Tanner.